Well, the unemployment rate this Thursday is tipped to remain close to 50-year lows at 3.5%. And on Wednesday, the latest annual wage price index is expected to rise from 3.3 to 3.6%. But employer groups are urging the Fair Work Commission to not be lured into granting a 7% wage rise to the lowest paid. That, of course, is the current inflation rate. For fear it will add to inflation and then put pressure on interest rates. The Chief Executive of the Australian Industry Group, Willox, joins me now. Innes, always good to chat to you. You appear before the Fair Work Commission this week. You'll be exhorting them to look further and deeper into that inflation number and not simply hand it straight out, which is what the government and the unions want them to do, obviously.
The government itself says in its budget released last week that they expect inflation to fall to somewhere around 3.25% in a year's time. So the Commission is handing down a decision which has enormous ramifications for business at a time where we've expected that inflation has peaked and it is on the decline. How quickly it declines is the issue. But we're not seeing increases in inflation to any great extent. And the Commission, we would argue, needs to keep this in mind when it's making its decision. We put forward 3.8% as the increase, recognising that we have been through a higher inflation environment for the past 6 to 12 months. That's very obvious and everyone would accept that. But also recognising that inflation's coming down, businesses are under enormous pressure around labour, around cost of doing business. This isn't just a cost of living issue that we're confronting at the moment, it's a cost of business issue as well. And there's only so much that businesses can bear. And the minimum wage becomes very much the platform from which other wage conversations take place as you go up the pay scales. That's why moderation here is going to be very important, or else we're going to have big consequences around unemployment or businesses not being able to pick up people and making some hard decisions around employment in the future.
Because you can see the ACTU for a time has complained about real wages going backwards. In other words, inflation is much higher than what the wages growth is. Members of the government also saying the same thing. But when you look in the budget, it actually forecasts in a couple of years' time, that real wages will be going forwards. I don't expect really to hear the ACTU calling for wages constraint at that stage.
Well, you wouldn't, but what the ACTU is now calling for is a 7% increase in the minimum wage, which is way above where inflation is at the moment and is expected to be in the months ahead. That would be an absolute backbreaker for a lot of businesses who just quite frankly can't afford it. You have business closures on the up. You have new business starts declining, down about 20% year on year in terms of ABN registrations. That's telling you it's getting harder to do business, not easier. And to have a wage outcome which is even remotely close to 7% would just be quite reckless, to be honest. And we've said 3.8%. This isn't some fun game of arguing, we put in a low rate, a low ambit, and the ACTU puts in a high one. We've been very upfront with the Commission here. This is as much as business can take. And they do anything above that, it will be at their peril and it will be at the cost of jobs. And we've been very clear about that and we'll be very upfront about it. Some people have said we've been overly generous with 3.8%, but we have to recognise, Ross, this is an inflation environment and people are doing it hard, no doubt about that. But if you go too hard on wages, you'll drive inflation back up and you'll drive wages back up across the board and that will further fuel inflation as well. So you've got to be very careful here. We do not want to risk relighting the fire under inflation in some sort of wages inflation spiral here. That's the risk we face.
Just a quick one here. You've also put in a submission to the government's consultation paper in regards to criminalising wage underpayment and reforming civil penalties. It seems to me, at least anyway, with this, that if you've got so many big companies who want to pay their workers the right amount, we're talking Qantas, Commonwealth Bank, Bunnings and Wesfarmers, all of these big companies get caught up in this. It becomes a genuine problem of the system, not necessarily, if you like, the will of these companies to deliberately underpay.
Well, Ross, let me put it to you this way. What business would want to have its reputation tarnished or destroyed even by deliberately underpaying its workforce? None. This goes right through businesses. The ABC has been caught up in this. The Labor law firm Morris Blackburn has been caught up in this. This just goes to demonstrate we operate under a very complex awards and wages system that is always changing. When you've got businesses, national businesses operating across state boundaries with people doing a multitude of tasks for that business, there's always going to be the potential for something to go wrong. What we've got now is a proposal that would make it more difficult for people to be repaid. It would mean that people wouldn't be repaid until after criminal action has been undertaken against company management and directors. That could be years. You've got the situation where businesses right across the board would be discouraged from coming forward to the Fair Work Ombudsman for fear of criminal penalties being imposed upon them. We want a system where people, if something goes wrong, they put their hand up and they correct it. And this is a massive disincentive for business to do it. Criminal penalties are a huge overreach when it comes to trying to fix an issue, which is the result of a complex payment system that businesses right across the country of all shapes and sizes have to navigate. It's the wrong direction to take here. And we want to have businesses say, okay, we've got it wrong, let's fix it and we'll deal with it. But this is to try to lock somebody up in a very complex, after trying to deal with a very complex system, just sends fear through employers and is, unfortunately, another discouragement to employing people.
Yeah, I know. Willox, it's always good to chat to you from the Australian Industry Group. Many thanks for your time.